open to the public while the building is open to the public during its normal hours of operations, nor shall this section apply to a person who enters a public building under the reasonable belief that the building is still open to the public. Now, Chicago itself has its own municipal code, which will allow them to trespass you. And as far as the post office is concerned, the post office is I would just for general purposes call it an agency. It has rulemaking authority, and it's Title 39 of the Code of Federal Regulations. That's where all of their various regulations are, but they don't have a trespassing regulation.
Right, I did notice that.
So they like to call the local police and have the local police use the local trespassing laws, which is why it's so terribly hard for Californians to be trespassed from the post office in California. But they also have their own regulations which can prevent you from photographing, and typically it would be federal law enforcement that would deal with that. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to beat you down with this.
No, that's okay. I when I was doing my research, I don't have any of the work in front of me, you know, but there's so many rules and regulations. I'm not a lawyer, but it does get really confusing. And the USPS is the one that I did my research on. I didn't look at anything else really.
Okay. So you're not a lawyer, and that's great. I'm not going to try to hold you to a lawyer's standard. But I do hear a lot of other auditors telling people what the law is and what the law isn't. Is that concerning to you, considering that they're not lawyers?
Yeah, well, not because they're not lawyers, but because there's so many different laws, and they're so different depending on where you live. And then you got to worry about like federal, you got to worry about state, you got to worry about, local things. And they all sometimes they contradict. Oftentimes they contradict each other, and what could be legal in one state might not be in another. And a lot of that stuff is sort of up for, it needs to be figured out in court. Still, there's not a lot of case law for certain things, and there's just so much gray area. And I think that a lot of us auditors go out there and we have the good intentions and stuff like that. We think we know the laws, but not very many people actually do the research. A lot of people go by hearsay and take that as law. And that to me is really sad, because I think people need to start doing it for themselves.
Well, that's a little disappointing. I am somewhat disappointed to hear you say that.
Why?
Because I think that some of the people who do research for themselves come up with the wrong interpretations. Because, like you said, it is very confusing. And show me one auditor that hasn't read Poster 7, and yet 99% of the time they get it wrong. Left to their own devices, they get it wrong.
That bothers me, because I think a lot of people will read it, but they don't they either choose to ignore, especially the last part, or they just kind of gloss over it, maybe don't really read it and think about it.
Are you on a laptop right now?
Yes.
Okay, if you look at the bottom left-hand side of your Discord screen, there's going to be a little cog that says user settings.
Let me see here. I don't see that.
On the left-hand side, bottom of your screen, it should have your little icon with your name, microphone, headset, and a cog.
User settings.
Yeah, if you click on that, and then you go into notifications.
Okay, yes.
Just turn everything off.
Oh, okay. Are you getting some kind of...
Oh, it's bleeping and blooping all over the place.
Okay, got it. Oh my God, I have all of these on.
I know. We all know.
Sorry about that. All right, I think I got it. Is it still doing it?
I think we're there. If you have all those turned off, then we'll be good.
Okay.
So the problem that I keep seeing over and over again is that people will hear like 3802. I've heard people outside of Texas cite 3802.
Oh yeah, I've heard it plenty of times too.
And
I've actually heard cops say it, which is kind of funny. In Minnesota, there's a video of that.
Yeah. I don't know if he was playing or not. So
He wasn't.
Okay.
He definitely wasn't.
But where I see people tend to go wrong is that they hear from people who they assume know, the established, the OG auditors. They hear that they can film in the X, Y, or Z place. They think because it's open to the public, then it's open for everything. And then because they think they have that right, then they push it. And they think they don't have to give up their ID, even though they may have to ID, and they push it. And then they catch, like Mexican Padilla caught how many charges over the course of like a month?
A lot.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And he thinks he's right, and he thinks that he didn't do nothing, and it's all going to magically disappear because of a constitution. And he's got a rude awakening. And I've seen that, like I see a lot of auditors who, like, they go out and they get one charge and then, like, they're done because they thought they could do it and then they can't. So with that in mind, what do you think about the people out there giving advice as to what the law is without understanding what the law is?
I don't know. I guess I don't have an opinion about it. I just encourage people to do as much research as they can. And
okay. So you mentioned Hemming. Do you have you ever heard him say that he's a lawyer?
No.
Have you ever heard him fail to tell someone that he's not a lawyer after having been introduced as a lawyer?
No, I mean, I'm not saying he has. I don't know. I'm not in his conversations like that. I'm not sure.
Okay. What auditing, there's a kind of a split between the California and the Texas auditors. What style of audit do you tend to prefer, the California style or the Texas style of audit? Actually, hold on. Before I ask that, because that was a very leading question, and I apologize. Do you think there is a difference between the style of the auditors in Texas versus the style of the auditors in California?
I don't think there's a lot of difference. I mean, because in both states, you're going to get people who are, kind of loud, a little more in your face, and then you're going to get the ones that are a lot more reserved back. I mean, there's a kind of a variety in both states, so I don't really see a certain style for a state.
Well, I'm glad I stepped it back then. Of the amendments, which amendment do you think is the most important?
Which one do I think is the most important? Probably the Fourth Amendment.
The Fourth Amendment. Okay. Why do you think the Fourth Amendment is the most important?
Because this is, I mean, the first one's about expression, but the fourth is more about invasion. Everybody, nobody wants to feel like they don't have their possessions,
Okay.
Or to feel like they're intruded on, they don't want people intruding on them.
Someone asked me this question. I thought it was very good. Previously, which do you think has been eroded more over time through court decisions, the First Amendment or the Fourth Amendment?
Out of those two? Yes. Probably the Fourth.
Okay.
Amendment, actually, but if you're comparing the First and the Fourth, probably the Fourth.
Okay. Can you expand upon that, or is that just kind of a gut feeling?
It's more of a gut feeling. The First Amendment, it seems like sort of in favor of that. But with the Fourth, there's been a lot of with the Patriot Act and different things, so many people are scared and they're seeming to think that it's okay, to search people and stuff like that for safety.
Do you own a firearm? If I may be so bold as to ask.
No, I don't like guns.
Okay. Are you for restricting gun ownership, or are you against restricting gun ownership?
I'm against it.
Against restricting it, or against? I'm sorry. Clarify, please.
Against restricting it.
Okay. So you don't like guns, but you want other people to have guns?
I don't think that my feelings about guns should be a factor in other people like that are responsible gun owners. I think like with anything, if you're a responsible person and
okay,
you should be able to own firearms. I don't think it's any of my business.
Okay, that's so it sounds like you're a little bit of a libertarian.
I used to be, but I don't like to put myself in that category, I guess.
Okay. Do you have a particular category you like to put yourself in?
Not really, because I changed my mind a lot. I think I'm more, I used to be kind of libertarian thinking, and I still believe in a lot of those kind of ideologies, I guess, but I'm probably a little more toward anarchist.
A little more towards anarchist. Oh boy. So James Freeman, is he right, wrong, or just drop dead sexy?
Drop dead sexy.
Okay. Do you like him pre-beard or do you like the new full beard look?
I don't know. I don't know.
Have you seen him pre-beard?
No, I haven't actually.
So, but ideologically speaking, you think you align fairly closely with James Freeman?
I think so. I don't really know a whole lot about his. You know, he seems very liberal, and I agree with a lot of the stuff that his beliefs, I guess. But yeah, I mean, as far as I know, it seems like we do. I like that he's kind of, I guess, does this thing.
So do you like his audits? You find those entertaining and enjoyable?
I like his audits.
Did you see the audit where he asked the police officer about the officer who pulled the gun on the kid on the bike?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Okay. Is it his just general demeanor when he's auditing that you like, or do you like the questions he asks?
I like his demeanor. I like the questions that he asks.
You like both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So would you, do you agree generally with what happened in Leon Valley? With the auditors' positions who gathered at Leon Valley and protested at Leon Valley, do you generally agree that they were morally or ethically or whatever kind of correct you want to choose from?
You're talking about the protesters? Do I think that?
Yeah, the auditor faction of it. Do you think that the protest, the initial protest or the secondary protest, do you think either or both were justified? And if so, kind of on what grounds would you think that they are justified?
Yeah, I think they were absolutely justified. I mean, aside from that, you know, it's the First Amendment. You know, if you got issues with what your government's doing, you should be able to, you know, you should be able to protest it and you let them know what you think, stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. I support it. And especially after what they did. I mean, starting with Mexican Padilla. Now, my personal opinion is I think he was wrong by going in there. And if they asked him to leave, he should have left, and they, you know, arrested him. And I don't think that was the big issue, but as far as, you know, the auditing community is concerned. But the next interaction, if I'm not mistaken, was when Mexican Padilla was outside recording because they trespassed him. And then the other guy, I forgot his name, went in and they tased him. He attempted to go through, and the way they did him and they arrested him and they tased him, that was completely out of line, in my opinion. And caused a little more outrage. Then after that, I think Jack went, and then the way that they were arresting everybody and seizing their stuff, it was ridiculous and it was outrageous. And I think what Mexican Padilla did was he found, you know, a bad city that needed attention. And so some changes need to be made. And, it brought a lot of attention to the auditing community. And I think that the protesters, I think there was definitely cause and reason to be there.
So I'm having a little bit of an issue with the timeline and the factual analysis that you presented there. Can we agree that initially the very first video that Mr. Padilla put up, where he was arrested for trespassing, can we agree that he was allowed to film in peace for about 20 minutes until he decided to play I Can't Speak English with the chief?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Are you aware then that he made several return trips to Leon Valley before he returned with Mark Brown?
I was after he was trespassed?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, I don't know. From what I understand, he was arrested. The second time he was arrested for trespassing, but I believe like disorderly conduct or something.
You kind of broke up there, but I'm going to just continue on as though I heard you entirely. Are you aware that the Fat Parasite Black Label Cop Watch came out with Univision and Mexican Padilla after the initial trespass of Mexican Padilla?
Yes. Yep.
Are you aware that they filmed, again without incident, inside the police station along with several auditors?
Yep.
At that point, what exactly had the city done wrong at that point? At that point, prior to the Mark Brown arrest, prior to the second Mexican Padilla trespass arrest, what had the city done wrong there?
I don't know. I don't think really anything at that point. My issue with them, this is my personal issue with the once they tased that one guy. After that, before that I would just kind of, I was paying a little bit of attention, but I wasn't paying that much attention.
Okay. So run me through your analysis of the tasing. What was wrong with the tasing?
Everything. He went in, he was compliant, he asked questions and stuff, he wasn't refusing to leave. Now this is just kind of a recap of trying to remember exactly what I saw, but he was going outside, he was leaving, they followed him out. And he complied with them and everything, and they arrested him and tased him. And
what if I gave you a different series of events?
Go ahead. Shoot.
What if they had told him he couldn't go into the building with the camera and he was outside for, let's say, 2 or 3 minutes filming the doorway without any interaction?
I don't know. It doesn't change anything, I don't think.
Okay. What if when they went out after Mexican Padilla, who was standing on city property that he had been trespassed from, and they went past Mr. Brown and didn't try to interact with him at that point? They were going to arrest Mr. Padilla. Would that change anything?
Well, I don't think that's what happened. If I'm not mistaken, I think more than one person went out. So one person was interacting with Padilla, and while the other person, who I believe tased him, was dealing with him.
What if I told you that Mr. Brown was attempting to interfere with the arrest of Mr. Padilla and demanding that the officers who were attempting to arrest Mr. Padilla give their names and badge numbers, and was actually moving in to where they were trying to effectuate the arrest?
I'd have to take a look at it again then, I guess, but I didn't get that impression.
Arguendo. What if? What if?
Oh, what if? I guess it depends on the amount of interaction he had with that situation. I mean, if he was to go over there and get names.
If he was going to go, you broke up, so I'm going to assume that you're not talking. I'm sorry, I can't hear.
No, can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you now. Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. No, what I'm saying is that, if he was walking over there trying to get names and badge numbers, that's not justification for him to get wrestled down and tased. I mean, if he was in there and like got between them and stuff, that might be another story. But I'd have to get up an opinion. I'd have to take a look at the video again. You know, I know you said it's just argumentative, but my impression when I was watching that video was not that at all.
Can you explain for me then why Mexican Padilla, who was arrested at the same time, was not tased and Mark Brown was tased? Can you offer me a reason behind that?
No.
Do you think it is at least brings questions up as why one would get tased and the other would not?
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, no, definitely. It would definitely bring up questions.
And you're aware that Mark Brown is something like 6'8" and like 280-ish pounds.
I knew he was taller, slender. I thought he was slender anyways, but
he's a big boy. He's a big boy. And if he's coming at you, let's say it's you, and you're trying to do something in a physical sense with someone who is actively trying to, not be arrested. If somebody like that came up at you, aggressive, hostile, getting into your face, would you feel threatened by that? Would you want to try to contain him so that you could deal with the person you're trying to arrest?
Possibly, but I know watching that video, my impression was not that.
I understand what everybody's impressions are, and that's kind of what I'm fighting against. Everybody's impressions are the cops are instantly wrong, and whatever happens, it's the cops' fault. But I want to point out that the general public who watches these, it's not me, I'm talking like the general public who watches these, they get a completely different sense of it than what you get. So is 90% or 99% of the population wrong, or are you?
I mean, that's really, how in the world would you get some statistics like that though?
Well, if you look at the statistics of the people who are in this particular movement, we're less than a percentage of the population, far less, like extremely less than a percentage of the population.
But you can't assume that we're thinking the opposite of what everyone else is thinking.
Who showed up in Leon Valley? Yeah, I can actually, because this movement is pretty much reviled. If you look at the cop websites, the cop YouTube channels, they have overwhelming support against this community. The community members who make videos that go viral, they tend to end up in sovereign citizen videos that are laughed at.
Who in the world goes onto like cop websites and cop blogs and things like that, talking about stuff like that? Not just like ordinary everyday citizens. It's usually people who, for what, they're the particular interest in this or policing, or, there's certain people, but there's so many people that are not involved in the community, but they said they support what we do and they would do it. But there's so many people who, there's a lot of people who join in the movement because of stuff like that they see. And there's, I just think that's a really unfair statement that like everyone else, except for just these less than 1% of people that are in the auditing community, feel the opposite of what we feel.
Well, so most people are very pro cop, whether I know that everybody's going to say, well, if a cop pulls up behind you, then you're going to freak out. Everybody does. I understand that. But most people are very pro cop, and I could give you solid evidence why. If you try to run for political office on an anti-cop platform, you will lose.
Right.
If you look at C.J. Grisham, he was anti-cop. He came in third place in a three-way race. If you look at the legislation that gets passed, it is very protective of the police. The police have heightened ramifications. If you assault a police officer, there are worse penalties than if you assault just a general citizen.
Right. And I definitely don't disagree with you on that at all.
That is highly indicative of the police being very well liked. And if you look at the turnout in Leon Valley, 11,000 people in Leon Valley. How many of the local population turned out to support the auditors?
Yeah, a lot of people. A lot of people didn't, and I don't even know if anybody from the community went. I know a lot of people from the community didn't know about it. I'm not saying that's why they didn't show, but not a lot of people support protesting. There's a lot of people who don't want to be out there like that for a number of different reasons.
That's true, but the same videos that get shared around in our particular community of the cops doing things, and we're like, gasp, the cops are terrible. I can't believe they did that. If you go onto cop YouTube channels like Officer 401 with 500,000 subscribers, overwhelmingly liked. So we are small fish in a very, very big pond, and the general public does not see the interactions between us and police officers the same way we see it. Are you aware that Monkey was attacked?
Yes.
Who was Monkey attacked by?
Yeah, by some people.
What kind of people?
Some just random people. It wasn't like police officers or anything like that.
What does that tell you?
Yeah, no, and you're going to find the same thing on the opposite spectrum too, when it comes to, police in some communities going in there and trying to, enforce ridiculous, ordinances and things like that. Sometimes you're going to find the community you're pushing them off too.
Yeah, there will always be things like that. The Black Lives Matter protests, they started off. My dog is very thirsty. I apologize. The Black Lives Matter protesters, they obviously gathered some measure of support, but it certainly didn't win the hearts and minds when that shooter killed 5 police officers. The next thing you know, there's huge outpouring from the community. Huge outpouring of the community for the police. You see, how many vehicles do you see with the Blue Lives Matter flags on them? How many people do you see with the blue flag, the blue line flag? And compare that to how many people you see rolling around with a Bunny Boots shirt or a Black Label Cop Watch shirt.
Yeah, this is not an easy thing. No doubt about that.
So how do you think that this movement, this community, et cetera, is going to be able to continue and grow if we continually alienate citizens by doing things like being general asshats and filming license plates, arguing with citizens, causing commotions in various public places? How do you think we can win while doing that?
It's going to be very tough. And I'm not, as you know, I'm not a big fan of that, doing things that way.
And yet this community is big fans of that. So what is the solution?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's a tough one. It's really sad to me. And no changes are going to happen overnight or anything like that. But regardless of what happens with the auditing community, I think that what I do and what a lot of us do and what we believe in is very, very important. I'm not going to ever stop recording the police, regardless of how many charges I get or anything else. I'm not going to stop auditing, I guess. I think it's really, really important to let the police know that they're being watched. I mean, because they get so much support and, people have their back so much and they have their unions and things like that, that they're more and more going to think that they can get away with anything. And they really can get away with But the only chance that we have for them to start, being a little more rational and start thinking more about what they do is if they realize that what they're doing is going to be documented and shown to people. And, the more people that see these things and they they see, the more that the community sees bad cops not getting held accountable for the things that they do, then the more that power will likely shift.
I have
until things change.
2 problems with that. The first thing is you'd have to explain the police who are held accountable, charged, and convicted for their crimes. And the second is you would have to explain to the general public why a police officer stopping you from filming is bad. Because most people, the general public, gets angry and upset to see you standing out there filming. It's the general public that calls the police.
It's an uphill battle. No doubt about it. But I think that it's the thing that's really difficult is getting people to sort of see the bigger picture. And